Hello, everyone. My name is Pradeep Nayak. I'm going to be the host for this webinar today. And I'm joining from the University of Waterloo and from the V2V Global Partnership Secretariat in Waterloo in Canada. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, because we know people are joining from different parts of the world at different time zones. So welcome to this month's webinar. So what I will do is I will go through a few rounds of introduction before we start to listen to our speaker today. The first round of introduction will be to the V2V Global Partnership, followed by a brief introduction to the thematic webinar series, and then I will introduce our speaker today, at which time I will invite him to speak for the webinar. So the V2V, or Vulnerability to Viability Global Partnership, is a transdisciplinary research, knowledge, and action network with over 100 partners from Africa, Asia, and Canada, and globally. The goal of the partnership is to support small-scale fisheries in their transition from vulnerability towards viability. And the way we understand vulnerability and viability is not just to focus on the economics and the income aspect of it, but also to really work on all aspects that matters in human lives. So the political, the cultural, the environmental, ecological, and institutional and other aspects. Our focus here is, fourfold. We are engaged in research that helps us to create and rather co-create and co-produce the knowledge that is effective in this transition from vulnerability to viability. But also I should clarify that we don't understand vulnerability to viability transitions as a unidirectional process. As vulnerable communities can move towards viability, very viable communities can also run the risk of moving back towards vulnerability. So we work on both these processes. The second is creating a repository or a database on the or information system that can capture this co-produced and co-created knowledge. Then the third is to develop multifaceted capacity, right from the community to the academia to the policy and other layers of society. Synthesis and integrate knowledge in a manner that informs governance and policy and practice, and also mobilize knowledge at all aspects of this work. The V2V Global Partnership aims to identify the diverse factors and conditions contributing to the vulnerability of small-scale fisheries and engage collaboratively with small-scale fisher communities and other key civil society, NGO, government, and university partners to enhance the viability of small-scale fisheries, and for that reason, coastal communities and other small resource user communities. We are conducting transdisciplinary, communities engaged, policy-driven research in 6 countries in Asia. That includes Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, and Thailand. And 6 countries in Africa that includes West Africa, East Africa, and South Africa. And the countries I can list here are Ghana, Malawi, Nigeria, Senegal, South Africa, and Tanzania. In doing so, the V2V Global Partnership brings people and organizations together across physical, cultural, and disciplinary boundaries through a shared interest in addressing global change impacts on small-scale fisheries. The V2V thematic webinar series, for which we have gathered virtually here today, is an initiative of the V2V Global Partnership to facilitate and generate high-level discussions on vulnerability and viability themes and topics within the context of small-scale fisheries and coastal communities. The goal is to feature academics, government representatives, practitioners, and members of the civil society who have made significant contributions to the theoretical, practical, and policy aspects of small-scale fisheries and coastal communities, both locally and globally. And we'll hear from one of those experts today. V2V thematic webinar series takes place on the last Friday of every month and will continue to be so during the rest of 2025 and also in 2026. The series is available internationally through live streaming on YouTube. Details regarding the monthly webinars, including speakers, topics, and titles, and links to webinar platform is available on our website, which is www.v2vglobalpartnership.org. Today's webinar is the 11th in the series of V2V thematic webinars planned for the year 2025. We are in November, so 11th. And the 59th since January 2021 when it all started. So you have been going strong and continuing since 2021, 5 years almost. And it is my privilege to introduce Dr. Hari Ramlu Raghavan as our distinguished speaker today. Dr. Hari Ramlu Raghavan has over 25 years of experience in sustainability management and policy in Malaysia and Asia Pacific. In the past, he has worked at the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, for Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei Darussalam as program manager in the Sustainable Development Cluster. In the above capacity, he developed, managed, and monitored and evaluated various projects in climate change and ecosystem management. Dr. Raghavan is currently the principal consultant at AKAR Asia Consulting. Through his extensive career, Dr. Raghavan has advised UNDP, World Bank, USAID, UNIDO, I think it's Industrial Development Organization of the United Nations, UNEP, and ADB, Asian Development Bank, in Sri Lanka, Papua New Guinea, Cambodia, Philippines, Nepal, Myanmar, Timor-Leste, and Vietnam, as well as Malaysia, from where he is joining us today. His main areas of work involve climate change and nature-based ecosystems management and sustainable development goals involving communities, private sector, and local governments. And you will hear in his talk how there is a constant link between all of these actors in the work that he has been doing. Dr. Raghavan also provides advisory services to the governments and private sector on corporate sustainability, environmental, social, and governance ESG framework, which is the main theme of the talk today, and related focus areas. Dr. Raghavan is a Human Resource Development Corporation HRDC certified trainer, a certified expert in sustainable finance, CFSFI, Frankfurt School, and an associate certified sustainability assurance practitioner, ACSAP, as well as AA 1000 assurance standards. Dr. Hari Raghavan studied in Lund University, Sweden, where he did his master's or MSc in environmental management and policy, and continued his PhD in UK in development management and policy. Dr. Raghavan has been involved in the work of V2V Global Partnership and continues to be a close collaborator and supporter for many of our initiatives, including the V2V South Asia Summer Course, Marine Protected Areas, and Coral Island SES. It is my honor today to invite Dr. Hari Raghavan, Ramlu Raghavan, to deliver today's talk for the B2B thematic webinar series November 2025. And the title of his talk is going to be, Can ESG and risks and opportunities support V2B in blue economy? Thank you very much, Dr. Raghavan, for making the time today. Over to you at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Pratip. Thank you for the V2V Global Partnership for inviting me. Can you hear me clearly? Yeah, okay. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who has joined us. I'm delighted to join you to talk about some areas of thinking that I've been thinking about when it comes to the relationship, partnership with the issues, elements of research that the community of practice of the V2B seems to be discussing these past few years. I'm new to the V2V community of practice. I'm happy to contribute and also learn from this partnership. Thank you to Professor Pratip for bringing me into this circle of community of practice in B2B. I learned quite a bit from my interaction with all the partners in the B2B so far. And there are things that also that I recall, I reflect based on the kind of projects that I'm doing in the past, as well as the work that I'm doing currently. So based on that, I suggested maybe I can talk about an area that I think becoming very important, that I think that perhaps the community of practice for V2V would be able to hear my talk and share my thoughts and ideas in regards to blue economy and how the practice of ESG can support these global demand for investment in the blue economy and so on. Let me share my slides. I hope you can see my slides there. So, in our interaction with the community of practice of this vulnerability to viability, one of the things that I see is that is there any possibility or potential for engagement with the private sector in regards to understanding and reflecting and approaching and finding perhaps solutions for some of the things that we discuss in B2V. And I'm also interested to see how the blue economy, which is the current focus of many governments' green economic policy, where the usage and exploitation of ocean as a resources to create economic activity and so on. So based on that, I was thinking of whether we can have some partnership with the private sector, because in parallel, you also see there are a lot of developments in terms of how corporations do their operations in regards to not only their shareholders, but also their stakeholders. Particularly with the increase in the requirement for private sectors to do their sustainability reporting and discuss about their impacts on E, S, and G of the operations. There are opportunities I see in blue economy where private sector's involvement perhaps can support our goal of understanding and providing some sort of solutions to vulnerability to viability. So bear with me, my understanding of the aspect of V2V, as Dr. Pradeep mentioned just now, will be focusing perhaps on economy per se, although you do discuss about many other things in V2V research and discussion. So that's why I thought I will say that I thought I will suggest that is it possible for us to look into the possibility of trying to understand how the private sector can support communities when they are involved in the expansion of the blue economy. So that's why the title is Can ESG Risk and Opportunity Support Vulnerability to Viability in Blue Economy? So my talk will cover four simple aspects. The first one is I'll talk a little bit about the blue economy for sustainable development. And then I will talk about how the private sector are now required to provide sustainable financing uh, in order for them to develop their ESG ambitions, and in the process of doing that, how they look at these as part of risk as well as opportunities for their businesses. And then I will talk about the stakeholder theory, a theory that has been developed quite some time these past few decades, a theory that seems to be applicable when we talk about sustainability reporting, ESG reporting, and corporate sustainability. And where in that stakeholder theory perspective of the corporation, whether the private sector can support the community to move from vulnerability to viability. And lastly, I want to throw some ideas, perhaps even some questions in regards to how do we move forward and how can the V2V community of practice can perhaps advance this potential of looking at the private sector's role in this V2V understanding globally. So let me move on. So in terms of the blue economy, of course, that has been discussed these past few decades, although globally the trajectory of the emphasis on blue economy only can be seen in the past 1 decade. You can see a lot of attentions are given in understanding what blue economy is all about and how it can support economic activity and at the same time support the achievement of sustainability development goals. That has been the focus of the global community this past decade or so. So if we look at the sectors that are covered under the blue economy. There are many sectors, and these are defined sometimes differently by different organizations. There's no standard international definition of blue economy per se, but the blue economy has been made popular by authors like Gunther Pauli, who talked about the possibility of the blue economy creating jobs throughout the world, and perhaps even potentially provide more innovations in the process. So we have things like ecotourism, sustainable fishery, marine agriculture, and then of course usage of the ocean energy, and so on, including bioprospecting and so on, where we use biological resources within the marine sector to advance the usage in the pharmaceutical industries and so on. So these are resources that are available within the context of blue economy that can be developed by the private sector, and using these resources also leads to, if you see on the right-hand side, the impacts that can be created because of the exploitation of the blue economy. And that is also aspects that need to be considered in most of the blue economic policies, strategies that being developed throughout the world now, which are the social equity, the environmental sustainability, as well as the economic viability, in order to make sure that you create a sustainable enabling conditions that can maximize the benefit from blue economy, and at the same time perhaps mitigate or reduce the negative impact of the activities within the blue economy. And I said just now about the SDGs, and SDG 14, Life Below Water, specifically looks at what are the goals and targets that we want to achieve. And the blue economy directly impacts the achievement of the SDG 14. So as I said, this past 1 decade, a lot of attention has been given to the potential of the blue economy. I can say definitely in Malaysia, the government is looking at blue economy very seriously, and there's a lot of discussions among the federal government as well as the state governments in regards to how do you explore the potential of blue economy to support economic activity, but at the same time also contribute to the development of the communities in these regions and so on. So we do have a position paper in regards to unlocking the potential of blue economy in Malaysia. And one of the proposal in this position paper is to come up with regulations and ocean policy for Malaysia, which currently I understand are being developed. And of course, you can see a lot of research in regards to the potential of the blue economy in Southeast Asia, looking at areas of fisheries, aquaculture, marine tourism, and so on. And I think these sectors are quite familiar for the V2V community. In your research, you also look into all these sectors, particularly how they affect the community and so on. What's interesting this year in regards to blue economic, the attention that's been given to blue economy this year, particularly in regards to mobilizing the financing to explore the blue economy globally. You can see already through the finance forum that was organized by not only by the private sector, but also involving some of the UN agencies and so on. You can see that the business in ocean is something that companies are targeting as we move forward from 2025 onwards. And there are plenty of investment that's being identified that goes into many sectors that I mentioned just now. And these financing, as I said, not necessarily come from the private sector, but it also comes from philanthropic as well as funding agencies. And in that process, the business in ocean discussion at the forum calls for commitments to integrate ocean-related risk and opportunity in the strategies for this blue economy investment. It also calls for ensuring there are proper reporting in regards to the impacts on the marine ecosystems, investment in the ocean positive solutions, and also support a just and inclusive transition for ocean-dependent communities. So this year has been quite a landmark year for the push for blue economy, and the financing for the blue economy is already there. And in coming years, in coming decades, that's going to be more mobilization of the financing. Naturally, this financing forum also discussed issues in regards to sustainability, so that the exploitations within the blue economy will not be only negative impacts and so on. So now I want to go to the aspect of the corporate sustainability and corporate responsibility that I talked about in the beginning, linking that to the blue economy in shortly. Now, in the work that we do and in the past 2-3 decades, you can see that corporations are now are required to look at their business operation from sustainable development perspective. And you can see in the past, the idea of going beyond the measurement of GDP, looking into what is the limits to our GDP growth and so on, and how it affects the ability of the earth to produce goods and services, to provide living services for humankind and so on, has been looked at from the perspective of sustainable development. And these discussions in the past has always been within government to government as well as international agencies. And you can see the development of the concepts and ideas for sustainable development since 1972 onwards. Basically, so all this discussion in the past uh, 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 provides directions for the economic growth globally, with the publication of our common future by the UN, that provides some sort of directions for communities all over the world to look at development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. And of course, that would mean in the long run, we do want economic efficiency, but we also want social development, environmental protections, and of course, this is done through the principles of like precautionary responsibility, participations, and so on. So that has been going on these past few decades. But in order to achieve that sustainable development goal, especially I mentioned about SDG, we need financing. Where do you get this financing from? So these past 2 decades, there has been some discussion in terms of how to shift this traditional way of financing economic activity without considering the environmental, social impacts into something which is more sustainable and so on. And therefore, there are efforts being made to ensure that finances are mobilized, aligned, so that these finances can provide sustainability impact. So it's not the traditional way of doing economic activity, but to do economic activity within the context of sustainable development. And you can do that only if the financing itself is geared into this sort of activity that provides positive impacts, at the same time minimize negative impacts and so on. Hence, you have this mobilization, alignment, and targeting impacts of the finances that can be channeled to achieve the SDG globally. And this mobilization of fund could come from many sources. It can be the traditional financial sector, investors, whether it's retail or institutions. It can come from development financing institutions. It can be coming from commercial banks or philanthropy or donors and so on. So the idea is to provide some sort of guidelines so that these finances can be mobilized. And that brings us to the development of this concept called ESG, environmental, social, and corporate governance. So in 2004, with this publication of this report by the UN Global Compact, these publications proposed that the investment community to conduct their investment by looking into the aspects of environment, social, where a better inclusion of these factors in their investment decisions will ultimately contribute to more stable and predictable markets, which is in the interest of all market actors. So the idea is not to lose the traditional goals of investment of the funds, whether it's that comes from the private sector, and that is you want economic return. But in order for you to have the economic return, you need to make sure that these markets are stable and predictable in the long run. And one of the best way to do that is to include the ESG factors in your investments and so on. You basically protect your investment by looking into these factors, the ESG factors, that can become your risk as well as opportunity. So with that publication, we have the establishment of the Principles for Responsible Investment that specifically provides the principles that you must incorporate ESG issues in your investment analysis and decision-making process by the private sector as well as the financial sector. And you can see the other principles there as well. So these are basically the UN Principles for Responsible Investment that's done with the collective agreement and partnership of many largest institutional investors globally. And if you sign up to these principles, then you are required to follow these principles. And you can see that over the years, the number of signatories has increased tremendously. And of course, this is a bit outdated data, but you can see that there are more and more companies globally are joining these principles in order to show their concern for the ESG factors in their investment decisions. Now, so now since then, the market, the investment community has developed many sophisticated way of looking into how to incorporate ESG into their investment decisions. And in the literature, you have a lot of analysis, a lot of perspective, a lot of let's say types of investment that has been proposed based on the need and the requirement of the or the owner of the funds. So you have on one extreme pure financial value, the traditional way of doing investment. You are not looking into any other factors but your pure economic returns. And then you have on the other extreme of this spectrum of the ESG investing, where the objective is pure social and environmental value, where the economic return is secondary. Perhaps in the past, that has been from the perspective of philanthropy funds that comes comes to wanting this sort of objective of pure social and environmental value. Now, and then in between, you have a whole range of possibilities depending on what the investors want. You have the responsible investing, you have the sustainable investing, thematic, impact first, and so on. So in reality, there are a whole range of investors out there, private sectors out there, funds that's available out there that meets these particular criteria of many of the spectrums of ESG investing. So, and this has been growing this past few decades. You can see the ESG funds are expanding. I don't have the data here to show that, but you can see that the funds allocated for ESG objectives has been increasing over the years, particularly on blue bond that is related to the blue economy. That has been the interest of the investment community only recently, perhaps in the last 1 decade. But the other types of ESG financial instruments, we have the green bonds, we have the social bond, we have sustainability bond, we have sustainability linked bonds, green loans, and so on. That has been exploding all over the world. And I can tell you that in Malaysia, in Southeast Asia, the amount of funds that's allocated for these financial instruments that look into ESG investment has been increasing tremendously. And coming back to the blue economic specifically, the interest in the blue economy is only coming of late. And therefore, in the past 1 decade, we can also see there seems to be initiative to also issues things like blue bond that specifically focuses the objective of investment in the marine and ocean-based projects. And of course, this blue bond also follows those principles, where the proceeds should go, how do you do the reporting, how do you monitor the returns in terms of these specific objective of these financial instruments and so on. And it's good to see that organizations like WWF are promoting these sustainable blue economic financing principles and also do some sort of monitoring as well globally. Now, so I've talked about the blue economic expansion and then the sustainable financing that also has been expanding, and part of it is the blue economic financing as well. And all these financings are seen from the lens of ESG impacts and so on. Now, in parallel, this past decade or two, you also have the business community not looking their risk and opportunity from purely the traditional way of looking at the risk as well as opportunity. And you can see that by looking at these charts, and these charts was developed by a private sector organization. Typically, these charts, in the 60s and 70s, perhaps produced by the international agencies like the UN, NGOs, and so on. But this is typical data that is produced by private sector that talks about what is the global risk in terms of doing business in coming years and so on. And you can see that from 2021, every year they produce this global risk report, and you can see typically environmental and social factors are being seen as part of their risk landscape that they need to address, they need to understand so that they can have a stable and predictable market in future. So that has become part and parcel of private sector doing business all over the world. And that shows that the companies in private sector are moving away of understanding the risk and opportunity in the traditional way and looking it from the sustainability issues. And they look these and they see these as part of the risk, but also potentially to turn that risk into opportunities. Whether the risk is from the policy, legal, technology, market, reputations, and so on. Some of these are traditional way of looking at risk, but also some of these are a new way of looking at the risk from the sustainability perspectives and so on. So the way corporations are looking into risk and opportunity are moving away from the traditional way of looking at it into looking into from sustainability perspective as well. So you can see the relationship of these changes in the corporate sustainability together with the in parallel what's happening in regards to the availability of the financing for the sustainability factors in the form of ESG. Now, one of the arguments in the business corporate sustainability is that traditionally the business's objective is purely to make profit and nothing else, and that has been the understanding of the business community for many decades. And there's this famous argument made by economists like Milton Friedman that business objective is just to make profit, and any diversion from that is not the objective of the businesses. And this is, of course, purely from the shareholder perspective. And of course, that has been the sort of emphasis and conviction in the past. And nowadays, of course, companies are still, of course, they want to make profit and so on, but moving away from this typical analysis of what should be their objective into what should be their objective by looking at the ecosystem within which they operate, which means their profitability now depends on how they interact with the players within their ecosystems. And therefore, if you look at many literature, economics, ecology, social justice, strategic management, and so on, you can see that the old way of looking at how these disciplines look, their players interact and behave in a manner to achieve or do something within these sectors has changed tremendously in the past few decades. Uh, whether it's the stakeholder theory or the inclusion of the understanding of sustainable development throughout the economic growth policies of countries and so on, you can see that we have moved away from the traditional way of looking at what is the perspective and objective of cooperation. Now it has moved towards the corporate sustainability. Even things like corporate social responsibility is quite outdated now, because now you look at yourself as a corporate that are sustainable in future. And therefore, we have moved on into the areas of corporate sustainability. So in parallel, while the investment community is looking into doing investment responsibly, taking into account the ESG factors, you also see there's a shift and there's a change in the principles of how corporation do business moving forward, taking into account sustainability. Now, so when we talk about ESG, sometimes we think they are interrelated. Sustainability development and sustainability provides a generic, broader term, whereas ESG gives you sort of a definition and define what the private sector should do in regards to these factors. So whether it's in the environment, in terms of how do you look at the impact on biodiversity, water efficiency, climate issues, and so on. Similarly, in the social factor, it defines what are the specific metrics that corporations should be concerned about. That goes to governance, and we have huge emphasis on the governance in terms of business and human rights and so on. Now, what happens when you don't have this compliance? In the past, we can see a lot of issues that's happening that when companies are seen as practicing unsustainable management, you see that there's a negative impact on their bottom line, be it in the form of regulation, be it in the form of reputations, and so on. And typically in Malaysia as well, we have one or two cases where this has happened. And because the stakeholders are right now monitoring and scrutinizing in terms of what companies do in regards to sustainable practices and so on. Now, that has led to many governments to start regulating how companies should disclose their sustainability practices. So you can call it sustainability reporting. Sorry for the wrong spelling there. Sustainable reporting or ESG disclosure. Now it has become mainstream. In the past, it has been voluntary, developed by NGOs like, non-profit organizations like Global Reporting Initiative, GRI, and then you have the SASB in US. These are industry organizations, non-profit, that promotes this sort of sustainability reporting or non-financial disclosure reporting. But now governments has become very concerned about this sort of reporting, and there are more and more regulations that's coming in regards to how companies should report and so on. And the latest one is that the accounting bodies in the form of ISSB has taken over to consolidate some of these reporting principles and structures, and governments all over the world now are trying to ensure that companies follow the new format of reporting under IFRS S1 and S2 that is being produced by ISSB. So it is becoming more formalized, more prescriptive, and more scrutinized all over the world. And Europe as well, you have specific government regulation in terms of how these reporting standards should look like. And interestingly, in ESRS S3, you have specific, under social dimension, you have specific metrics in regards to affected communities. So you should report how your operation is affecting communities and so on. If there are some sort of effect, what are actions that you are taking to rectify the impacts and so on. So now you notice that sort of requirement within these reporting standards makes the industry to be more inclusive towards the community as well. In Malaysia too, we have this reporting requirement, and I think in Malaysia, the compliance to this reporting requirement is extremely high. Many companies are already doing their sustainability report, and you can see there's maturity in regards to things that they report in their sustainability report and so on. In Malaysia, also moving into more streamlined reporting, we have something called the National Reporting Sustainable Framework. People like us are heavily involved in these, and we see an opportunity for the private sector to contribute to the other stakeholders, particularly communities and so on, throughout Malaysia in many sectors, by adopting this National Reporting Sustainability Framework, which is going to start. We have already started this year, but the actual implementation would start next year onwards, depending on where the companies are located within the Group 1, Group 2, and Group 3. So I talked about the blue economy. I talked about the financing that's available for ESG investment. And then I talked about what happened in parallel in regards to how companies, corporations are managing their practices. It's no longer only your annual report in regards to financial factors, but you now have to report your non-financial reporting in regards to your impacts on E, S, and G. So now I want to link it back to the basic principles that these sustainability reporting guidelines that has been developed in these past few decades, using particularly the stakeholder theory. As you know, this was developed by Freeman 1984 onwards. And of course, it's not without any criticism. There are many criticisms on that. But I think on the whole, there are more acceptance in regards to stakeholder theory. outside the business community as well as within the business community. So it says that the businesses need to take into account and they are answerable to not only the shareholders, but the the stakeholders as well. So there are many stakeholders here. You have internal as well as external and so on. And you can see how the companies need to really define who are the stakeholders, what is their role, and so on. So one of the way we are looking at the understanding of how community can be supported by private sector by looking at this stakeholder theory as well as this trajectory in the corporate sustainability reporting as well as the availability of ESG investment, which is the sustainable financing. You can see that the corporate sector now looks at all stakeholders as partners in their business, and therefore they need to ensure that these partners' requirements and needs are met as well. So one example is in terms of the vulnerability of ecosystem that we talk about under the V2V. Um, See, those ecosystems need to be protected and preserved, and they cannot be done by government alone. And you can see a lot of efforts are made by NGO, but these are rather in small scale and perhaps not widespread, economic widespread. So we see the private sector as a potential partner to bring in investment so that these ecosystems are protected. And of course, they want these ecosystems to be protected because they want returns in future. And at the same time, that could provide benefit to the communities as well. So naturally something that we need to look at as a potential to increase the value of the ecosystem in future. The private sector is able to bring not only the funds, but they can bring technology and capacity to regenerate, protect, and preserve this economic ecosystem in future. So there are many examples in Malaysia. For example, if you look at the ecotourism, it depends on a lot of guide and boatmen, but it can only be an ecotourism if these guide and boatmen understand how to protect the ecosystems and so on. And mainly what we see is that the way you ensure this guide and boatmen really understand how the ecosystem can be protected, that capacity, that support can be provided by private sector. And by collaborating with the businesses within that particular ecosystem, you notice that the ability of the players within the market can be increased to protect the ecosystem and so on. And one of the reasons why they have to do that is because the corporations are now required to do these non-financial reporting as part of their business processes. So we see the potential for the private sector to support community within the ecosystem where they operate and so on. So in the corporate sustainability, engaging the stakeholders are extremely important. We use principles like dependency, responsibility, influence, diverse perspective, and also conflict and tension with the stakeholders. You see the stakeholders from this perspective, and you want to define them and understand what are their requirements and so on before you engage them and make sure that you can have some sort of work plan to deal with the needs and requirement of these stakeholders. Okay, let me go a bit faster then. For example, we have a company that reports this in their sustainability report. When you talk about the local communities, they have clearly stated what are the engagement platforms, what seems to be the areas of interest that they need to understand, and then they report how do they respond to these areas of interest and so on. And then they also provide uh, uh, um, areas where they can create value to these stakeholders. In this case, protecting the community safety and so on. So by providing this opportunity of clearly defining how they're going to engage the stakeholders and how they're going to provide the impact, this creates opportunity for the private sector to provide a positive impact to communities in whichever ecosystem they operate and so on. So I want to bring your attention to how the private sector operates or report the ESG and sustainability impacts. One of the way they look at the uh, potential identification of who are the stakeholders that they need to provide attention is through doing some sort of materiality index, where you look at the significance of these issues for the organization, but at the same time, you want to see what are the significance of these metrics to the stakeholders. And then you plot them, and then whatever that seems to be importance for both will become the focus. As you can see in the index, the top right sort of corner is where they're going to focus in regards to how do I create the sustainable value for the stakeholders and so on. So you do have some sort of processes to identify these and to make sure that they focus on that. Naturally, they can't do everything, but at least they have some way of identifying these metrics so that they can provide their planning in coming years and so on. And that will be reported in their sustainability report. Another example, this is a shipping company. Okay, this is a hospitality company in Malaysia. You can see how they plot their materiality analysis metrics so that they can focus their funding, their effort to support the other stakeholders that they're interacting with. Another example that I want to highlight is the involvement of a company called Telecom Malaysia in the island that we visited under the V2V activity in Pulau Tioman. You see here the sustainability framework of a large corporation called Telecom Malaysia that clearly identifies that community development is part and parcel of their material matters that they need to report in their sustainability report. And as a result of that, you can see that this particular island this particular community in the village called Mukut is really being promoted by this company by providing funding for the activities that's being done in the village, either by providing the digital network, providing avenues for the communities to build their capacity, and the company is also providing funds for the community to be involved in tourism as well as sort of a mini agriculture activities within this particular village in this island. So you can see that the company has taken a lot of interest in developing this community in this particular village in this island. Although they're a very small fishing community who have actually changed their lifestyle to tourism since the island has been what do you call it, made a gazetted marine park. So the last aspect that I want to discuss with you or throw some ideas or questions is that perhaps one of the area where the V2V community or practice can support is to advance this interaction, this ability of the private sector to support the communities. So there's a possibility of reducing the vulnerability and at the same time enhancing the viability by looking into these ESG dimensions that the corporations need to take into account and report in their sustainability report. So the stakeholder theory as well as the corporate sustainability both supports the idea of looking at the risk and turning it into an opportunity. And similarly, it means they can also be made to support communities to go from vulnerability to viability as well, depending on the context and how these processes are arranged and so on. One of the things that we need to ensure that the private sector is able to do that is by providing guidelines, frameworks, and so on. Now, I have an example here in one of the journals that I have read. Very interesting that they have come up with these blue ESG frameworks, whereby they talk about what are the attributes and indicators of metrics within the ESG dimensions that companies, private sectors can support the blue economy when they're involved in these activities of the marine sector, whether it's fishery, shipping, tourism, energy, and so on. So these are the type of attention and research that we need so that private sector are guided or perhaps even provided a clearer understanding of what activities that they can do to support communities and so on. Of course, this is very generic, not necessarily only for the community, but other elements, things like environment indicators and so on. So what I was thinking is that the NGO and the research community must be involved in sort of supporting this paradigm of looking at ESG risk and opportunity that can contribute to communities in whichever ecosystem that's available. So bringing in private sector as a partner, is becoming more important now than ever because one, there are a lot of sustainable financing, and two, inherently the private sector now is being required to support and report some of these stakeholders' impact that they are involved in their business practices and so on. So, we need more research and analysis done by the V2V community to support these engagements, this partnership with the private sector, looking into the processes, strategies, and so forth. So that will be something that's interesting that I look forward that we can do in future. Thank you very much. Sorry, I took a little bit more time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hari. That was wonderful. A very novel, area to venture into in terms of our work. We have never looked at that, through our work. Even though some of the country teams are focusing on private, public partnerships and private, community partnerships and other kinds of related stuff, but we never had a comprehensive view of what it might look like in terms of ESG, sustainable finance, and corporate responsibilities for sustainability in relation to the hard work that is required for ensuring viability at the community level itself. Because there is a lot of trade-offs, as you highlighted in your talk, involved in this particular process. So thank you once again for that comprehensive view that really taking us into the domain of theory and concepts, but also giving us a really interesting perspective of what is happening out in the world. How not only the private sector companies, but also the NGOs and the government are responding, not only in Malaysia but elsewhere as well. So thank you very much for that. We don't have a lot of time, but we still have 10 minutes or so. I would read some of the questions that have come. Some of those are just thank yous to you for providing the wonderful view on ESG. There is a particular question that I would like to read, which is by Nabya Nair. And the question is, the framework of ESG, stakeholder engagement, includes tensions as a principle. How can tension be a productive force in community corporate relationships rather than a destructive force? And I think you probably had something in the principles slide about tensions.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's very typical in regards to how the private sector um, try to understand the stakeholders, particularly in regards to, let's say, communities or let's say a locality in a local area with the local council and so on. So in the ESG reporting framework provides an opportunity for the company to deal with this stakeholder engagement very carefully. So in the past, things are done in a very cut and dry manner. They say, nope, we just follow the law, so it's just too bad, that sort of responses and so on. But nowadays, because of these stakeholder engagement, whether it's in accordance to the law or not, companies are required to systematically handle these tensions in a more sensible manner. And it's interesting that a lot of corporations now, they have a full-time sustainability unit. These people are trained to handle these kind of tensions in a very amicable way. And in my experience, uh, one of the ways that these tensions are handled is also by involving the third party, sort of an independent party and so on. Now corporations are more confident in engaging with the community in regards to these tensions by also bringing in perhaps a local council or a NGO that's familiar with the community and so on. And usually the companies will have some sort of let's say planning in terms of how are they going to resolve this in future, by giving some sort of timeline, some sort of clear-cut action plan and so on. And because this sort of tripartite kind of players involved, the communities also reduces their tension in regards to the problem at that particular point of time, because everybody now is discussing and finding solutions how to overcome and so on. So typically that happens, but companies now are trained to handle these more amicably and so on, whether involving third parties or not.
Thank you. Thank you, Hari. The other question is with regard to number 5 on the Petronas study value. Dr. Hari, can you share some insights on financial sector ESG in relation to the number 5 on Petronas study? And if you can also unshare your screen so we can have a full view of the discussion.
Which one is that? This one?
No, the Petronas. Yes, this one.
Yeah, this Petronas, no?
Yeah, number 5.
I don't know what you mean by 5, but
Can you
if it is
explain the
Petronas,
biodiversity impacts or something, So it's an unclear question, but it says, can you explain number 5? We can just leave it there and then move on.
Okay. You mean the Petronas, huh?
Yes.
I don't
Yeah.
see biodiversity under the value creation, but
Yeah, let's just leave it. So, and then the related question is, can you share some insights on financial sector ESG?
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's even more easier actually. The principles of ESG was first adopted by the financial sector, and that has led to the financial sector now requiring the companies to tell them if they want finances, whether in the form of bond, loan, or investment, uh, what are they doing in regards to sustainability and ESG framework? So you have the financial sector adopting the ESG investment requirements. Of course, the spectrum can be very different. I showed in one of the slides, depending on um, how much they want to provide the funding for the impacts and so on. But the financial sectors are definitely following the ESG investment principles these days. So they are the one who are now sort of converting private sectors, companies, to look into this more seriously. That's number one. Number two, I would say that the financial sector is the one who is really pushing stock exchange regulators to come up with guidelines that they can use, as well as companies out there, whether you are listed in the stock exchange or medium and small companies, so that the guidelines can be followed by these companies, and the financial sector can use these guidelines as a way of understanding this ESG impact of these companies that can allow them to make decisions in their investment, whether to invest or to provide a loan and so on. So typically, if two companies go to a financial sector and look for a loan, naturally the financial sector will provide the financing at a more, let's say, conducive conditions for the company that has shown that they have done ESG impacts properly and so on.
Um, I know that we're getting to the time. There is I don't think it's a question, but a comment. I will just read it. Great presentation. Your ESG framework reminded me of my recent experience with the fish sanctuary in Jamaica. The small-scale fishers themselves act as inspectors. It's just moving very fast. And there's a bunch of experiences, which is great. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, exactly. Typically, the communities can also be part and parcel of the ESG framework implementation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had a related question about, there's a lot of investment and funding that we are talking about. Who ultimately gets this to handle this, in the pursuit of sustainability? It's not always the community, but there are big players within that which might be taking full benefit of that. So do you have any perspective, to what extent it goes to the community, to the real, stakeholders that are at the receiving end,
Yeah,
rather
of
than...
course. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we have an opportunity to look into this funding from many spectrum, right? So you have funding that are purely for economic return, and therefore, there could be far less funds that goes to the community. But on the other hand, you also have the other extreme type of funding where most of the funding goes to the community and less goes to other stakeholders. Let's say when you do a project and so on. So typically that's what will happen and so on. However, in the investment decisions of the private sector in the blue economy, that has got impact on community. I believe that these decisions will be made way beforehand in the planning processes, and therefore they need to understand the quantity, the quality, the issues, the dynamics of the community in the area, and they will take into account how much funds needed to support those, let's say, livelihood of the communities, the area, and so on. So I'm very positive that that funding will be specifically allocated to the community in the ESG investment into blue economy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And there are, 6 or 7 questions that just flowed in, but my
Okay.
apologies. We cannot take it because we are at time. What we will instead do is send those questions to Dr. Raghavan, and there will be an opportunity to engage directly through email with him. So thank you very much, Hari, for that wonderful topic, and doing really good justice to discussing and elaborating on that completely, and generating some really novel areas of discussion within the B2B global partnership and the overall work that we are doing with small scale fisheries communities, and the opportunities, challenges, and possibilities of transitioning between vulnerability to viability. It's not just from vulnerability to viability, but also how to sustain these communities that may be viable from not reverting back to vulnerability.
Correct.
And
Correct.
yes, we would
Correct.
look at those two processes within their conceptualization as well. So thank you very much, and thank you to the audience. Interesting questions. We'll keep this discussion ongoing. This will be available on YouTube, so put your comments in there and start the discussion. This is, as we always say, this is just the beginning of the discussion, not the end of the discussion. So we look forward to having you in the next month, December B2B thematic webinar series. It will not be the last Friday because of the holidays, but it will be the last the Friday before the last Friday, and we will inform you all through our usual channels. So stay tuned to that. So thank you once again to everyone.